A woman wrote, "Ask about Boston," on my door after claiming to be my husband's ex. The real story was more twisted than I imagined. I, 34F, never thought I'd be posting here, but after what happened last weekend, I need some perspective. My husband and I have been married for 3 years. He was previously married for 8 years, and their divorce was finalized 2 years before we met. They don't have children together, and according to him, the separation was mutual but messy when it came to finances. Last Saturday, I was home alone. My husband was out of town for a business conference, something that happens maybe once every few months. Around 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked our doorbell camera through my phone before answering. There stood a woman I'd only seen in old photos, my husband's ex-wife. I froze. In the 3 years we've been together, she had never once tried to contact him, at least not that I knew of. She looked agitated, fidgeting with her purse strap, and repeatedly checking over her shoulder. I decided not to answer. Something felt off. Instead, I watched through the security feed as she rang the bell 3 more times, then started pounding on the door. "I know you're in there," she shouted. "Just give me what he owes me and I'll leave you alone." Money. Of course it was about money. My husband had mentioned that their divorce settlement had been contentious, but he assured me everything was resolved legally. According to him, she'd received their joint savings while he kept the house, which he eventually sold before buying our current home. I texted my husband immediately. "Your ex is at our door demanding money. What should I do?" While waiting for his response, I continued watching the feed. She pulled out her phone, made a call, and began pacing on our porch. "He's not answering," she said to whoever was on the other end. "His car isn't here, but someone's home. I can see the lights on." A pause. "No, I'm not leaving until I get what's mine. He thinks he can just ignore me? After what he did?" My husband finally texted back. "What? I don't owe her anything. The divorce settlement was final. Don't open the door. I'm calling her." Minutes later, I watched her answer her phone, her face transforming from frustration to fury. The conversation was brief. She hung up, shoved her phone in her pocket, and stood there for a moment, seemingly contemplating her next move. What happened next is why I'm writing this post. She looked directly at the doorbell camera, raised her middle finger, and then reached into her purse. My heart raced as I wondered what she might pull out. A weapon? Instead, she extracted a small bottle and began squirting something on our front door. I switched to another camera angle we have mounted near the garage, which gave me a better view. She was writing something with what looked like red paint. When she finished, she stepped back to admire her work, took a photo with her phone, and walked away. I waited until her car left before checking the damage. Written across our door in what turned out to be nail polish were the words, "Ask him about the money and the woman in Boston." Boston? My husband had gone to Boston for work several times during his previous marriage, but he'd never mentioned any significant events there. Was this just a desperate attempt to cause problems between us, or was there truth to her accusation? I went back inside and called my husband, who was understandably upset about the vandalism, but confused about the Boston reference. "She's trying to create problems," he said. "I don't know what she's talking about with Boston. I had regular business trips there, nothing else." I believed him. We've always had a transparent relationship, and this seemed like a desperate act from someone trying to stir up trouble. Still, I couldn't help feeling unsettled. The next day, as I was cleaning off the nail polish, which was surprisingly difficult, a car pulled into our driveway. It wasn't the ex-wife this time, but a middle-aged man in a suit. He introduced himself as her brother and apologized profusely for his sister's behavior. "She's been going through some tough times," he explained. "Lost her job 6 months ago, then her apartment last month. She's staying with me now, but she's not handling it well. She's fixated on the idea that your husband somehow cheated her in the divorce." I appreciated his apology, but maintained my distance. "That doesn't excuse vandalism," I replied. "We have everything on camera." I know, he said, hands raised in surrender. "I'm not defending her. In fact, I came to make it right." He handed me an envelope. "This should cover the damage and any other inconvenience. We don't want trouble. I'm taking her to stay with our parents out of state until she gets back on her feet." The envelope contained $500 in cash. It seemed excessive for nail polish damage, but I accepted it as a gesture of goodwill. I also figured it might be easier than pursuing charges, though part of me wondered if we should file a police report anyway. After he left, I returned to cleaning, my mind racing with questions. The brother's story made sense, but something still felt off. Why was she so convinced my husband owed her money? And what was the Boston reference about? That evening, my husband returned from his trip. When I showed him the security footage, his face paled at the Boston message. "What is it?" I asked, noticing his reaction. He sat down heavily on the couch. "I didn't want to tell you this over the phone," he began. "The Boston thing, there was an incident." My stomach dropped. Was the ex-wife telling the truth? During my marriage, I took a business trip to Boston. My company put me up in a nice hotel, and one night, after a successful meeting, I went to the hotel bar to celebrate. I met a woman there. We talked, had a few drinks. I held my breath, preparing for the confession I suddenly didn't want to hear. Nothing happened, he continued. We talked, that's it. But my ex found text messages between us. The woman had given me her number, and we exchanged a few friendly texts. My ex was convinced I was having an affair, even though I wasn't. It became this huge issue that she would bring up constantly. Eventually, it became one of many breaking points in our marriage. Relief washed over me, followed by confusion. But what does that have to do with money? He sighed. After we decided to divorce, we agreed to split everything 50-50. But during the proceedings, she changed her mind and demanded more, claiming emotional distress over my affair. Her lawyer suggested she could make things difficult by bringing up Boston and other business trips, implying inappropriate behavior. My lawyer advised me to settle rather than drag things out. So you did give her more money? I asked. Yes. The final settlement gave her 60% of our assets instead of 50%. It wasn't a huge difference, but it was the principle of the thing. I just wanted it over with, so I agreed. I showed him the cash her brother had brought over, and explained his visit. Her brother, my husband said, looking puzzled. She's an only child. My blood ran cold. If he wasn't her brother, who was the man who came to our house? And why did he give us $500? We immediately checked the security footage again. The brother had been careful to keep his face angled away from our cameras. We couldn't get a clear image to show the police. Concerned about the mysterious visitor, we decided to file a police report about both incidents. The officer who took our statement seemed skeptical about the severity, but documented everything and took copies of our security footage. Probably just trying to cause trouble, the officer suggested. But we'll look into it. In the meantime, be extra vigilant about your security. That night, unable to sleep, I went through my husband's old social media accounts that he rarely used anymore. I was looking for any photos or mentions of Boston trips, anything that might give me more context. What I found instead was a comment on a post from 4 years ago, before our relationship. It was from the ex-wife, responding to a work photo my husband had shared of a business dinner in, yes, Boston. Her comment read, "Enjoy it while it lasts. The truth always comes out." Another user had replied to her, "Take your meds, lady. Your paranoia is showing." That comment came from someone whose profile picture matched the brother, who had visited our house. I woke my husband to show him the discovery. I think this guy is connected to her somehow. Maybe an old friend or new boyfriend. My husband studied the profile. I recognize him now. He worked at my previous company in the IT department. I barely knew him, but he and my ex became friends during company events. I had no idea they stayed in touch after the divorce. The next morning, my husband received an email from an anonymous account. The subject line read, "Boston was just the beginning." The email contained only a link to a private cloud storage folder. Against my better judgment, we clicked it. Inside was a single audio file. It was a recorded conversation between my husband and a woman, presumably from that Boston trip. The recording was clearly edited, cutting out context and piecing together fragments to make it sound like they were discussing an affair. Anyone listening closely could tell it was manipulated, but at first glance, it seemed damning. "She recorded my conversations?" my husband said, horrified. "That's illegal in Massachusetts without consent." We immediately forwarded the email to the police as additional evidence of harassment. The officer assigned to our case called back promptly. "We actually have some information for you," she said. "The woman and man in your footage match the descriptions of 2 individuals involved in several similar incidents across 3 states. They target divorced individuals, usually men, claiming unpaid settlements or revealing alleged affairs to new spouses. They typically follow up with offers to make it go away for increasing sums of money. So it was a scam, a relief in some ways, but disturbing in others. These people had researched us, knew details about my husband's past marriage, and had gone to considerable lengths to create convincing evidence. How did they know so much about your divorce? I asked my husband after speaking with the police. He thought for a moment. Public records. The divorce proceedings are technically public. And social media, obviously. Plus, if this guy really did work in IT at my old company, he might have had access to emails or other communications. 2 days later, the brother returned. This time, we were both home, and our security system alerted us to his presence. Instead of answering the door, we called the police. Officers arrived quickly and confronted him in our driveway. From our window, we watched as they questioned him. Initially, he maintained his story about being the ex-wife's brother, but when presented with evidence to the contrary, his demeanor changed. The police took him in for questioning. We later learned that he and the ex-wife were indeed working together, but they weren't romantically involved. They were former coworkers who had developed this scheme targeting divorced individuals. The $500 was just the beginning, They planned to return with evidence of the Boston affair and demand a much larger sum to keep it quiet. The real shock came when the police revealed that my husband's actual ex-wife had nothing to do with this. The woman who had shown up at our door was an imposter who bore a striking resemblance to her. The scammers had used publicly available divorce records and social media to gather information, then crafted their con around those details. But why target us specifically? I asked the detective assigned to the case. Your husband's previous divorce settlement was substantial enough to make you worth targeting, he explained. Plus, from what we've gathered, they prefer situations where the current spouse wasn't around during the previous marriage. It makes it easier to create doubt and tension. In the weeks that followed, we learned that the scammers had attempted similar cons with at least 7 other couples. All involved one spouse with a previous marriage that ended with a significant financial settlement. The woman posing as the ex-wife was arrested in another state attempting the same scam. Both she and her partner now face multiple charges of fraud, extortion, and harassment. As for my husband's actual ex-wife, the police contacted her as part of their investigation. She was living in another state, happily remarried, and was horrified to learn her identity had been used in this way. This entire ordeal has been a stark reminder of how vulnerable our personal information can be. We've since increased our home security, locked down our social media accounts, and become much more cautious about what we share online. If there's one positive outcome from this experience, it's that my husband and I have had deep conversations about our past relationships and the importance of complete honesty. The scammers tried to exploit potential cracks in our trust, but instead, they inadvertently strengthened our bond. So if you've made it this far in my story, let this be a warning. Be careful what you share online, invest in good security cameras, and if your spouse's ex shows up demanding money, maybe call the police before you start questioning your relationship. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.